Hey, y'all. I want to welcome you to Confessions of a Male Gynecologist. Quirky name, fun topics. But this topic is pretty serious and something that I have been deeply involved with for, gosh, maybe the last 6 years of my life. And that is a medical device um, called Essure. Are you still there?
Yeah, still here. Everything okay? Do you want to start again?
Oh, you're back.
Remember that Riverside has weird ass, uh, really weird uploading. Let me switch to a different Wi-Fi network just to make sure I'm on the fastest one
Okay,
for you, just in case there's like an issue with the
sure.
upload.
Okay,
Mine does this all the time.
okay. As
My Riverside does
long
this
as
all
I
the
know.
time. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we'll start over. Um, Hey, y'all, welcome back to Confessions of a Male Gynecologist. Quirky name. Sometimes we have fun topics. Today, I want to get a little bit serious, and I want to talk about medical devices and medical device failures and kind of how women, I feel, bear the brunt of those failures in many instances. A product that came on the market in 2002 called Essure, which was a female sterilization device. I got involved removing them about 2016. And I have a wonderful, world famous influencer, Bree, the Betty Rocker, who actually reached out to me. We had been kind of mutual friends. We had mutual friends in a group that we're in. And she reached out to me. And this is a woman who is very physically fit. That's your brand. You teach women how to be physically fit. And yet, you had this device, and I kind of want to start with why you got the device. Like, how was it presented to you when you got it, and what made you? Because you're kind of a more natural type person to put a foreign material into your body. I mean, must have been a pretty good sell.
Yes, it was. Thank you again for having me as a guest. And this is something that was difficult to talk about at first because it's such a personal choice, right? Women's birth control
Mm,
is a personal choice for each of us. And having options for birth control and having options for how we choose to navigate our own bodies is very important. And yet, the choices that we have are often, they come with the burden of unexpected side effects. And for me, I had been on the pill since I was 14, and I was experiencing a lot of side effects from the pill that I didn't realize at first were side effects, because when you get on the pill that young, you don't always know your body yet. Your cycles have just started. And uh, I, I had started to feel, I was 28 at the time that I got off the pill. And I had just started to feel like I was raging, that I felt like I was out of control a lot with my emotions. And it wasn't something that felt natural to me. Like it felt like something, and I had switched birth control pills a couple of times trying to find like just the right fit, because I would have different weird symptoms. And at the time of my life, I didn't know as much as I know now about how the pill really suppresses your natural cycle. I thought I was making the best choice for myself that I could at the time. And I really was, because I needed a form of birth control that was simple for me to use, that I felt was had the highest success rate, because I didn't want to end up in a situation where I would have had to become pregnant unexpectedly. And so I I used what was available, and I often used multiple methods of birth control. Of course, I would also use condoms, but I just always felt like the pill was there to like back me up just in case. There are a lot of situations that women can get into that are dangerous, or you just don't know. I mean, all women know what I'm talking about. There's always like a little bit. Anyway, for me personally, I just felt good knowing I had a backup. And until I got to a point in my life where I felt like the trade off was that I was suffering. I had really strange periods sometimes, and I just didn't feel like it was natural. To your point, you pointed out I'm a very natural person, but this was feeling like it wasn't natural. Well, I was 30 when I learned about Essure, which is probably right around when it came out. And my doctor, I had a wonderful doctor, and she knew that I really wanted something to really like back me up. And I hadn't decided yet if I wanted kids or not in the future. But the way that the doctor positioned it to me was that this could be reversible in the future if I wanted it to be. Like they could take it out. I would still have all of my organs, and it might be a little more
Well,
challenging to get pregnant in the
that's
future,
lie
but
number one, right? Lie number one.
right. Right. It's crazy. And there was never, and basically she made it feel like it was just the simplest. I just want to be fair to this doctor because she really, I know that she got into medicine to care for women, and she was telling me what she was told. So I just want to say that about all the great doctors out there who implanted these devices,
Hey,
thinking,
I put in probably 150, and I always am transparent about that because, like you said, the way it was sold to us as physicians was it's not surgical and there's hardly any downtime, and
yep,
it's just a lot easier, and it was FDA approved.
it was FDA approved. And it was it was a thing I could do in office. And like, let me back up and say that the reason I had gone to her in the first place was because after getting off the pill, I just got off it. I should have gone to a doctor and said, I'd like to get off the pill. Should I transition somehow using some type of hormone or something? Anyway, maybe they would have said it doesn't matter, but I just got off the pill. And then within the course of a year developed a polyp in my uterus that had to be surgically removed. It was causing a lot of bleeding and pain and concerns. So I was seeing that doctor at the time, and then that's when she said, well, what are you going to do for birth control after this? And I said, I don't know. What options do I have? And she said, well, this could be done right in the office. It's not even a surgical procedure. I'll just implant it. It goes intravaginally, and we insert these coils in your fallopian tubes, and they create a little scar tissue barrier. And then, you can't, the egg, you still have your ovaries, you still have your uterus, you still have everything. And I was like, well, that sounds natural to me, not ever being told about what the device was made of and not being smart enough to ask. And of course, back then, even if I had asked, they wouldn't have told me that there were any side effects. They would have said, this is totally safe. It's FDA approved. I mean, they did tell me that. I had to read a lot of things. I had to sign a lot of things. And I felt confident that this was something that would be a great option for me for what my goals were.
Right, and I think justifiably so. There were about 1 million of these put in nationwide. That's just in this country. There were multiple countries where these were placed. And like you said, I don't ever chide the physicians that put them in, except for the ones that maybe were continuing to put them in despite knowing that there were some issues. I can tell you there is a Facebook page called Essure Problems that's been around for probably 10 years, started by a wonderful lady named Angie Fermalino. And she unfortunately had a hysterectomy because of fibroids or something. And when they removed her uterus, they morcellated it or cut it into pieces, and that threw the Essure all over her abdomen.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and that's not something you can easily, obviously, recover from. And she started this Facebook page, and because of her persistence and the help of other women, she eventually had the barriers removed it from the market in 2018. But that being said, the journey starts with you wanting to do something. 2 episodes that I need to do separately now. One is Your Brain on Birth Control Pills with Sarah Hill that I actually already have set up. And then another is, why do women have to bear the brunt of birth control in the world? I mean, men, we don't have to do anything. And even condoms, if you expect the guy to just have a condom, ready at the ready, chances are they probably won't. So that's another whole issue we can talk about. But what I'd like to talk about next would be, okay, so you've decided to do it. You're pretty comfortable with what's going to happen based on what you saw and heard and read. Now let's go to the day that you had it inserted. Was it difficult? Was it easy? How did that go?
I don't have much memory of it because I was there for a different medical procedure was my primary focus. I didn't have medical insurance at the time. I was self-employed, and I didn't have a big savings. I had actually to apply for like a government assistance in order just to get the polyp removed. And my doctor had made it seem like this other procedure could be rolled into that because it was happening at the same time. So I don't remember much about anything that day. I just
That's good.
remember being really
That's
grateful.
actually a good thing. Yeah.
I just was really grateful that I could that I had this option, basically.
Okay, so
And
for
that I
those
was
that
able
don't
to get
know,
care.
Essure is what's called a hysteroscopic procedure where you come into the office. Usually, when we did them in the office, we would have given you maybe some Valium or had you take something, maybe given you something through an IV, or even had an anesthesia doctor in the office that could have put an IV in you and kind of put you in a twilight sleep. It's a hysteroscopic procedure, meaning we put a speculum in the vagina and we put a camera up inside the uterus. We would then fill the uterus with some water to see, and then we would thread these little coils into the little tubal openings on the inside. Now, some women, I can tell you, experience horrible pain with it. I mean, it was like some of them will describe the worst pain they've ever felt. Others, like you, maybe don't remember it because they were asleep or they had been given some other substances that just made it easier. What I've noticed is that women that had them put in like you did and don't have any recollection, meaning it was a pretty easy insertion. When did you start? There's three types of patients out there. There's the women that had immediate problems, that had pain, bleeding, other issues that they just knew right off the bat happened after the Essure was placed. There's women that have Essure that have absolutely no problems. They're actually doing fine. And then there's women that had the Essure placed that had problems, but they didn't make the connection right away. Like it took them years to figure out, like, oh, I got lupus or I got Hashimoto's or my joints are killing me. I have a rash, I'm bleeding, and then they eventually start reading about it and they start putting pieces together. Where were you? Like, when did you figure out that maybe it was causing issues?
I think I fall between your second and third category, the person who would have had no problems at all and the person who had developed problems. And the reason I say that is because we all know that the body can naturally detoxify itself.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own pathways to handle all of the different things that life throws at us until we overflow that system and we can't handle the burden any longer. And then things start to go wrong, right? I'm, as you know, an extremely healthy person, proactively trying to stay as healthy as possible. So I had a very long success in a healthy body until I was exposed to black mold. And I have some genetic um, predisposition to being extremely sensitive to mold. And so my body started to have like this reaction. So my healthy system that had a big margin for handling toxic load suddenly was overwhelmed. And I think that most likely the Essure device had been irritating me. It was an irritant, but because of my healthy lifestyle, I had enough margin to handle that inflammatory response all the time. Like I was always like able to
Mm-hmm.
handle it and I didn't know. And I might have successfully gone on my entire life not knowing that was going on. And because of the mold exposure and because of having that sort of autoimmune almost reaction, I started having about a year and a half into the mold exposure and the treatment for mold exposure, which sometimes makes the mold feel worse. Like you just feel
Mm-hmm.
terrible when you're getting treatment. I started having abdominal pain in that area, exactly where the Essure was. And it wasn't until I was working with my physical therapist and he was releasing my psoas and just doing some deep work that I made the connection to, because he had his hands in that area. And I was like, and I had already had pain there. And he and I were discussing it. And he's like, I wonder if we need to release your psoas a little more. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? I have a device in there. Like that's when I made the
Mm-hmm.
connection.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about part of what was going on with my mold recovery was all of these hormone concerns. And I was not able, like, my doctor was actually kind of surprised that I wasn't responding to some of the treatments, and she was doing a great job with them. And yet I was really struggling to respond. And I felt like, oh, my system must just be overwhelmed. But once I had that sort of hit of like, oh my gosh, I have this device, I started looking up information about the device. And that's when I realized that this had been pulled from the market several years
Mm-hmm.
before and that
Yeah.
this could potentially be a problem.
Well, weird that you never got a notification too that, if something goes wrong with your car, you get an email or something in the mail saying it was recalled, right?
Yeah.
This device technically wasn't recalled. It was just taken off the market, and they said it was
Quietly.
because, yeah, well, and they said the reason wasn't because there were problems. It was because women were using more long-acting birth control, like IUDs and things like that. Obviously, we probably know better than that now, but that's how I think that's why women still don't. I get women even now still that are coming in, and I want to say the main components of this device were nitinol, which is a nickel titanium alloy. One of the interesting things about that is there's a lot of humans that have nickel allergies. And when this device first came out, we had to physically test for nickel allergies. Well, that was cumbersome. So we didn't really put many of them in because we didn't want to do nickel testing on everybody. And so what happened was magically around 2006, all of a sudden the nickel allergy was removed from the package. So we didn't have to test for nickel allergies anymore. And then around 2015, it was put back on. So there was about 8 years or so there where we weren't testing for nickel allergies. And so a lot of women that have nickel issues have these in there. And also something called polyethyl terephthalate, which is basically polyester. And let's keep in mind the way that this device works when you put it in the fallopian tube is it causes inflammation. That's what it's supposed to do. But, and I've had conversations with people at the manufacturer, there's no off switch. Okay. So it just stays inflamed. And if you already had a borderline issue, like an autoimmune thing that maybe wasn't totally affecting you because you are healthy or you're doing everything else you should be doing, and then you put this device in there that's like pouring gasoline on a fire. I've noticed in a lot of women, the average time to recognition is probably around 2 to 3 years. And then they start connecting the dots. So you started figuring this out. And did you go talk to other physicians to see what your options were? Or how did you get to the point where you wanted to have them removed?
I'm such a proactive researcher myself, and so I had initially just started reading as much as I could about it, and I reached out to my my physician who had been treating me for mold and for the hormone issues. That's Dr. Jill Carnahan, who you and I both know and love. And she said, "My gosh, Bree, that is such an amazing connection that you have just made, and that makes so much sense to me. Who do you want to talk to about this?" And just literally that day, I was scrolling through Instagram and you had done a post about Essure. And I was like, oh my gosh, because we follow each other on Instagram and I know you. And I was like, Sean's talking about Essure, and he seems to be talking about what I've been learning about, which is that this is a dangerous medical device and that it needs to come out of people who are experiencing symptoms like I'm having. And he would know what I'm talking about if anyone does. So I reached out to you that day and we started chatting about it. And Dr. Jill and you corresponded. You guys are both like the kind of doctors anyone would want on their team because you're team players. You're looking, how can I support this other doctor who might have an expertise that I don't, which I so appreciate in medicine. It's the gold standard in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful. And you helped me and your team helped me, and I got in to see you. And then,
So I will tell you, a lot of women actually find what happens is they'll have a lot of back pain or hip pain or leg pain, and they'll go to a chiropractor. And chiropractors do x-rays, right? So the chiropractors will do the x-rays and they'll go, what the hell are these things?
Right,
And
right.
they're like, oh, these are these Essure devices. And they're like, well, you need to get those out if you're having all this pain. And it's interesting how, and I will say this is a testament to the toughness of females, because you all will put up, if a guy had that problem, it wouldn't last for years. Okay. They would be, because we get a cold and we're like the biggest babies on the planet. But women, and I think this is society in general has probably made it this way, but women have to wait 18 minutes longer in the emergency room for pain medications. They wait 7 to 8 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. They wait 7 years, and it's not that they're waiting. It's just that the medical system doesn't really give them any options other than like a birth control pill. And so that this Essure device is a testament to that, in the sense that a lot of women, the ones that I see now, have gone to, luckily there are no synchronicities that happen for a reason. But a lot of women don't have that necessarily fall into their lap. So they see 3 or 4 doctors who tell them that they don't know what to do, or, oh, those don't cause problems. I've never seen that before. I've put in hundreds and my patients never complain. Well, that's because they're going to other doctors because you're not listening to them. So you decided to get this done. And the process, like you said, we work, obviously I work with insurance and things like that. So
Yep.
you come out to Austin, and how was the actual procedure for you? I'm talking about the actual procedure, laparoscopy, use little cameras. Now, do you mind me telling them what type of procedure you had done?
No, not at all. And I'm so glad you will, because I think a lot of women are afraid of this
Yeah.
part of it.
So
So
a lot of
please,
women are
please
only
share.
offered they're only offered hysterectomy, which is kind of like a nuclear bomb to get rid of them. But the flip side is that there aren't a lot of doctors that know how to just remove the coils and the tubes. What's happening a lot, and this hopefully this podcast will save a lot of women from this, is that the doctors are going in and they're cutting the tube open and then they're grabbing the coil and they're just pulling it out. And the problem is it snaps in half, pieces fall off. And so you're getting them removed, probably 90%, but then there might be a piece stuck behind. Because remember, they scar in and they're not super strong. They're pretty fragile, so they break pretty easily. But I've done now 1,000 removals. So what happens is I actually will cut around the tube, which is what Bree had done, where I'll core around it all the way down into the uterine tissue, into the endometrial cavity. So the coil and the tube all come out in one piece. And then I put a stitch in the corner of the uterus. And the extra thing that I'll do, and I think all doctors should do this to do removals, but I don't know of anybody that does currently, is I'll do an x-ray while you're still asleep in the operating room to make sure that the pieces are all gone. I've had 2 cases where I did the x-ray and there was just a little fleck of something still in the corner. So I had to go back and get that out. And I always ask women, how do you know they got it all if you didn't do an x-ray? And then what happens is a lot of the times they'll ask their doctor for an x-ray post-operatively and the doctors won't order it because I don't think they really want to know. So recovery-wise, you had this laparoscopic surgery. You came out to Austin. I do surgeries on Thursday. Did you stay in town for a few days and then go back, or what did you do post-op?
First, I just want to back up to pre-op, because I was
Okay.
scared.
Yeah.
Like, even though I
Okay.
had elected to do this and I was like, knew that this was like going to be the right thing and I was comfortable with the surgery, I still had like this panic and like this, like, what am I, surgery is scary. Even if it's minor, it's still like scary. And I remember like what I was afraid of was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing this part of myself. Like, what have I, like, what have I done to myself? And now I'm losing part of my body, like part of my female organs. I'm losing them. And I reached out to you about that concern. And you had just this really, really wonderful way of making me feel like everything was going to be okay. But it was also the way that you approached it. You said, you tell me, can you tell our listeners what you said to me in case this is ever a concern for them? Because it wasn't so much that you were taking something, it was something else.
Well, usually what I try to do with patients is I first of all, I don't like to operate on people that aren't ready. I mean, you have to be
Yep.
mentally there, right? And
Yes.
especially like if I'm doing a hysterectomy or if I'm taking a piece out of your body, I would rather have you give it to me than
Yes.
me take it, right? So I think mentally that helps because there couldn't be anything worse I can think of than a man taking your uterus from you if you don't want it removed. I mean, that's basically assault. And and even if it's you sign a consent, I think knowing that you have mentally done that process where you're like, I'm done with this. I have a lot of women that come in like that. They're done. They don't want it anymore. But then some like you that are just like, I never planned on having this happen. I don't want to have surgery, which I totally understand. And that's the other flaw with this device is the only way to get it out is with surgery. There is no other way to do that. And so to have you mentally there, I think helps not just with the process, but with the healing
With the
afterwards.
healing. Yes. And so I just had really appreciated, and I wanted you to share that little piece, because why I got on birth control in the first place, I shared at the beginning of this, was, the dark shadow of what if I get raped and get pregnant? Like, what if I have, like, because it's about consent, right?
Mhm.
And that is what I think we're touching on here a little bit, is that you are so conscious of creating choice for women and making sure that they are fully informed and that they're making a conscious choice. Like you asked me on this podcast, is it okay for me to share the surgery that you had? Like these are all things that make a great doctor, that make a great person in your life that you can count on when you need something to help you. And I think women deserve choices, and they deserve better choices in general. And they should always be given a choice, and we should always be able to give our consent for anything that's going on with our bodies, as we all know. So anyway, that was just something I wanted to touch on because it shouldn't be so unique. And yet I am so grateful for that experience I had with you, because when I did get to Austin and went through the experience, by the way, I had the most incredible male nurse. He was just so wonderful and took such good care of me. I had a companion with me to drive me, of course, afterwards back to the airport and be with me after. I mean, the preparation was smooth. I got to see you before the surgery. I felt totally prepared. I was very calm and like comfortable. And then I don't remember anything after a bit, after once they gave me the sedative. And then I woke up and I was definitely uncomfortable immediately afterwards. And had like the drainage and all those small things, but it was also well explained. I didn't feel afraid of it. Expectations had been well managed. Basically, I knew what to expect. I went back to my hotel room for that day after the surgery. I spent the night there, and I was able to walk just fine the next day, and I flew home the next day. And then I had really great post follow-up care instructions. I was able to connect with you and your staff with anything that came up for me, just to check in, like, is this normal? Is this okay? And everything was fine. I wasn't scared or nervous. And within 2 weeks, even like 10 days, I was lightly exercising again and back to normal exercising in within 2 weeks. And I really wasn't in a rush because I have learned to really respect my body's process. And the things I focused on the most were like meditation, stress management, getting as much sleep as possible, getting to bed early, nourishing foods for my body, collagen supplements so that I felt that my tissue would repair as quickly as possible. And just like walking every day, I walk the dog, and just like gentle movement that got my body like moving, because we know that that's a great way to get the lymph fluid moving and help the healing process. So I wanted to keep the inflammation to a healing inflammation and not overburden my system with anything additional too early. So I really listened to my body and tried to support it in every other way possible.
And that's super important. And not that she's alone in her recovery, because she does have an amazing French bulldog named Bodhi. And he was, I'm sure, very helpful. But
yes, I'm normally his emotional support human, but he got to be my emotional support dog for a change.
I mean, anybody that doesn't follow you, and I'll have you put up your stuff at the end or tell your stuff. He's got his own page too, I think.
He does.
He does, of course, yeah. And
it's very indulgent of me.
Yeah, well, but I think the other thing that was really great was two things that you've done. First of all, and this wasn't related to Essure, but she has a great reel on her site where she's trying on a pair of shorts that used to fit you. Now, you don't, any of you that have ever, she's tiny, you're a tiny, tiny person, and you work out all the time, but you had these shorts that you're trying to get them, you got them on, but it took a while. And then you're like, what am I going to do about this? And you just threw them to the side and you put on a bigger pair of shorts. And I think it's like that for me, that was huge, because I'm looking at you as this like fitness guru who's, body conscious and working out all the time. And you were just like, hey, this is just who I am right now. And I that message, it's off topic, but that message for me, even for me as a man, really resonated, because, who doesn't have to buy bigger pants every once in a while? It happens. And I love that part of you. A friend of ours, Tony Yoon, put it up the other day. And it's really, I mean, I want to give you kudos for that, because I really appreciated you doing that.
Thank you so much. I think what the message I really wanted to convey I've evolved from a woman who was a lot more body conscious in my appearance into a woman who is really health conscious, and focusing on my health is my number one priority, and how I look may change because I'm not constantly in an unhealthy state trying desperately to be as low body fat or to wear a certain size, right? And I think part of the message from that I was conveying is that we go through different seasons of our lives and our bodies may change. And we're so fortunate to have these incredible bodies like that are capable of change and weathering these seasons. And we have to take the pressure off of ourselves to look a certain way or be a certain size, because bottom line is your health. That's what matters. Now, granted, sometimes weight gain, inexplicable weight gain, can be a sign from your body that there is something that needs to be addressed, which it was in my case with the mold. The body was storing up toxic stuff in my fat cells, and I was gaining more fat to protect me. And so I was very fortunate that my body did that. Other times when we go through a weight gain experience, it could be because we've just experienced childbirth, and
Mhm.
or we have gone through a shift in our hormones. And sometimes that's something that needs to be addressed. And other times it's just time to be patient and get education about how to care for ourselves and get ourselves back to an optimal health state. Not everybody who is in an optimal health state is skinny and shredded and lean. We have lots of different ways to express a healthy body. And I think that mental health is probably the
Mm.
most important piece of all of this. So, how we love ourselves through these different evolutions and through these stages of our lives and seasons is really the ultimate health and healthy expression. So, that's what I was really wanting to say. And I don't work out all the time. I actually have a very balanced approach. I used to work out all the time, and that's when I was like, kind of skinny. Now I work out an appropriate amount for myself, and I focus on strength training and explosive cardio and balance, and really the other things I talked about during my healing journey, the stress management, the sleep portion, the nutrition piece. Those are equally, if not more important to me in supporting my exercise workouts, because without those pieces, the workouts really don't have that much impact, you know? So thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Yeah, that, and I think, I often send a lot of my patients to your website because you have a lot of great content, and you even have ways that women can work with you, because I'll see women on my end that are hormonally imbalanced, and I always tell them, I can balance your hormones, but doesn't mean you're going to lose a ton of weight. You have to do the other things. And then on your side, you have a lot of women sometimes that are doing the right things, but then they can't lose the weight because their hormones are sort of out of whack. So it is a
Yes.
team approach. And
Yes.
you should never just assume that one person is going to be able to fix all of the things. Now,
Yes.
we should work together, and hopefully a lot of us do. But I will tell all my patients to follow you, because the other thing you did that was great too is, even after your surgery, you showed people your belly, you showed people your injuries and how you were adopting your post operative course to get back in. They're talking about somebody that's very active, to be down for a few days, but even for women that aren't very active, how they can recover. And I like your approach in the sense that you're always talking about forgiving, not being too hard on yourself, and really just doing what you can do. I just got this app called Couch to 5K, which is horrendous, but yeah, I mean, just even walking is better than nothing,
No, it's not even walking. Walking is what we were designed to walk. And walking is like one of the most underrated activities for fat loss, because we actually are burning more fat when we're doing low impact activities. And we still want to do a combination of these things. But the problem with a lot of what's happening, why people gain more fat, is because they just have a more sedentary lifestyle and they don't realize they're not as active as they were when they were younger. They're sitting more, they're not moving as frequently, and that lowers their energy, as well as it makes you gain more body fat. So just staying more physically active. But you're touching on this theme that I've come up with, which is all or something. And
Mm.
that's really what the message that kind of came to me a few years back, when I was like, man, everywhere out there in the fitness industry, I hear this all or nothing, all or nothing, all or nothing. And it's so damaging for people, because this is a lot of why they give up on their fitness programs or their approach to a healthier dietary approach, they give up because they feel like they fell off one day or they like didn't do it perfectly. And I was like, it's not all or nothing, it's all or something. And when you have that more kind approach where you're like, okay, I couldn't do it all today, but I did some of the things so that I'm still good. I'm still in the running. I can still keep going forward, because that's really how we get to any goal, is to continue forward and not to just stop and backpedal and start again 100 times and quit. So I think that message is really important.
Yeah, it reminds me of a friend of mine, and I was listening to a book by Gabby Bernstein, and she says this or something better. And I really try to work with that in my own life, because I do sometimes focus on where I'm at instead of,
Mm-hmm.
or living in the gap, they call it, where I focus on what I didn't get, or, instead of what I did, what I have accomplished. And that's really important too. Like, let's say you only walked 3 days this week. Well, you did 3 days this week, and 2 weeks ago you didn't do any. So, one last thing: after your surgery, now that you're recovered and everything, it's been a while. Did you find it was easier for you to heal from the molds and things, or was it there was a lot going on with you, or what got better after you had the removal?
It's tough to say specifically, but what was really interesting was after the surgery, it was, I feel like it accelerated my healing process, because here we are. How long has it been since I've seen you? Less than a year, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, like much less than a year. And I'm not even, I was having like such regular visits with Dr. Jill about the mold, and we've, in our last, the blood panels just continued to improve. She said, I've never seen someone improve so quickly,
Hmm.
like there was after, it was after the Essure, our last blood panel. She was like, I've never seen the markers turn around like this between blood panels, from our last blood
Wow,
panel to this
fascinating.
next blood panel. And she was just really, really impressed. And I know that lowering the inflammatory response in my system allowed my strong system to
Yeah.
kick in and do what it needed to do faster and better. And all of these things are we still need to respect the body's process, right? We can't like expect it to go like super fast. This is why, weight gain and weight loss, these are things that take a little time. We have to be patient with them. But my body's back to, where it was before I got stuck with mold. I'm able
Great.
to build muscle again. I'm able to eat healthily and feel like my body fat is wherever it should be, depending on what my approach is. Like, I had to take a more lenient approach sometimes. Other times, I'm focused on losing body fat. Sometimes I'm not. But my body is responsive to what I'm doing now, which it wasn't before. And I really attributed that speeding up of the healing of what else was wrong with me, from getting this device removed. Like, that was huge. I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so glad I came to you.
Thank you. I'm glad you came too. So, how is it that women can find you, and can they work with you, either through like online coursework or something along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's so generous. You can find me on my website, thebettyrocker.com, which is where you can find all kinds of articles. Check out the women's health section, particularly. Some great podcasts, some great articles. Tons of research goes into these articles. That there are research that's specific to women, not just research done on a general population. And I think that's really important. And you can find me on Instagram at the Betty Rocker. But if you want really the connection and the education about our bodies and how they work, just go to my website. You'll also find my healthy eating programs, my workout programs. And if you want to connect and be in a private group, and also get access to all of our challenge programs, you can just go to Find Rock Your Life. You'll find that right there as well.
Awesome. I can't tell women enough. Hormone imbalance. The number one thing to work on is nutrition, and number two is moving your body. So somebody like Bree can really get you. I mean, I can do the hormones, but you really need to get the foundation set. And so I'm so happy that you're out there, because I refer all my ladies to your website. And I'm so happy that you're healthy and happy. And make sure you go follow her and follow Bodhi for all of your French bulldog needs. I'm actually looking at buying a blue right now.
Oh,
Uh, they're so cute as puppies with the blue eyes and the gray. I think they have more health issues, though, the blues do, that I'm reading about. But I've had a Frenchie and he passed away, so I'm looking to get a new one. So, but man, they're bossy. They're bossy.
It's okay. They can be bossy. I don't think we
Yeah.
deserve dogs.
Well, I have an English too, and the English is just a big oaf, and then the little Frenchie like runs the show. They just have a lot of
Oh,
personality. So,
yeah, they really do.
all right. Well, it's nice talking to you. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I loved having you, and I'm definitely hoping you'll come back. Here's to your health, and we'll be seeing you online.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. So with